Hey, welcome back everyone to the Progressive Brothers Podcast. This is episode 22. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Progressive Brothers Podcast. Also follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast. So today's topic is Black people having access to capital, and is there racism in the structure of having access to capital? And so I want to cover this just really quick, and I'll add these two clips in here so that you can get a better understanding from people within the field of finance, venture capitalism, as well as other forms of Silicon Valley investing, impact investing. And so this is important because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation and questionable information that gets put out here in the ether that says that Black people should be doing X, Y, and Z in terms of starting their own supermarkets, doing this, buying that, investing in this. In reality, most of these Black people did not have the resources, the access to capital to actually invest in such ventures. And the pushback is, well, Black people have money to buy Jordans and they have money to buy iPhones, but this is a different sort of measure to determine what Black people should be doing. The ability to invest, to be engaged in consumerism is not the same as acquiring assets, hard assets. It's not the same. And so what I want to do is play these two clips, and then we'll close it out and you guys can come up with your own conclusion in the end.
Can you talk to us first and foremost about some of the key players that you spoke to and how they feel in this current scenario and environment?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I spoke with people including Tyson Clark, who is a general partner at Alphabet Inc.'s GV, formerly Google Ventures, at Ade Ajao, who is the co-founder of Base 10, and he actually has the distinction of being the Black person who has assembled the largest war chest ever for a Black VC at $250 million now with his second fund. Chantel Garvey at Reach Capital, and Sydney Sykes, who used to be in the industry and left, who actually said to me that when she was at NEA, a prominent firm here in the Valley, she'd introduce Black entrepreneurs who were very talented and had, great companies they were building to her white colleagues. And she'd feel the chemistry in the room sour. And she said that they always use the same excuse for why they wouldn't meet that person again for another meeting, which is that they just couldn't get excited. And the same was true with job candidates who came in. But there are many VCs right now in Silicon Valley who are thinking not just about their colleagues, but also their own role in the tech industry not being as inclusive or representative as it perhaps could or should be.
So, Nico, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. There are people out there in Silicon Valley that have pushed back on this idea that there's any sort of systemic discrimination out there, racial discrimination, and they point to the fact that you have a relatively decent percentage of Asian Americans and Asian immigrant entrepreneurs that have managed to sort of get funding and grow relatively profitable, or at least relatively good companies here. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what's the argument there that blunts that criticism?
Right. This is absolutely an argument that some people say in Silicon Valley, including, by the way, venture capitalists, influential, powerful ones at mainstream firms who some of them themselves are Asian immigrants or Asian American. And there's one person I spoke to who asked not to be named because of the sensitivity of these private conversations, who approached his white and Asian partners at a firm and said, This firm has not been investing very much in, Black-started companies. This firm really should be investing earlier in the process to make up for some systemic issues reflective of American society. The fact that Black entrepreneurs may not have a friends and family round because they don't know people who are very moneyed. And they said, no, I am an Asian immigrant and I was able to make it, and this person had to explain that there are very different experiences between African Americans and people who immigrate to the U.S. either already quite educated or for their education, for college or graduate school, who then are in different economic circumstances.
Nico, what has really changed in the last 4 months, let's call it?
I think part of what has changed is a sense of awareness and a level of comfort in having these conversations, which is not to say that they're easy conversations to have, even for some of the most vocal VCs, but it is now okay to say, we have a problem at this firm. It is okay for, some people, including Tyson Clark at Google Ventures, to say to his colleagues that, he's not okay right now and he needs to take time off. And there are many VC firms who have said, okay, we acknowledge that there is a problem now, and we're going to set up these funds. In the case of Andreessen Horowitz and in the case of SoftBank, they said that they would have these standalone funds specifically for Black and brown people. The problem with that is
small business, and I think about communities, and small business is the lifeblood of the community. And progress in small business in Black communities is what we need to strive for to make gains. But so far, while there has been some, it's really tough to move the needle. Hard to really see that it's moved at all for a lot of reasons. And can you go over both the hurdles and what you see as solutions to those hurdles?
Sure. Well, again, thank you for having me. And this is an important topic, I think, as we recognize Juneteenth today. And I think all of America has had a history lesson. Tulsa is just one of many examples where Black businesses have been the cornerstone of our communities, and in many cases, the cornerstone of larger communities. And we consistently, though, have faced these hurdles of lack of access to capital. The percentage of Black businesses that receive PPP is minimal and should be embarrassing. And part of that is because of structural barriers in the system, that we lack bank relationships, and not because we're not qualified, but there are no banks in some of our neighborhoods. And the initial PPP program did not support CDFIs, community development financial institutions, which is where we find ourselves, or alternative lenders. We also know that pattern recognition in the venture capital space is significant. I feel more comfortable because I look like you, because I know where you went to school, because I know the golf club you hang out, and we're not there. Oftentimes because we're working 2 to 3 jobs or running a business that literally takes all of our time and doesn't allow us to have the same social capital, but we do have social capital within our community. So I would say that the 3 of the biggest hurdles are lack of access to capital. I would say lack of support from investors and the belief in our ability to be entrepreneurs. And then I would say all the other kind of non-financial barriers of poor educational opportunities in our communities and the like, that all lead up to lack of access for us in the same trajectory that many white businesses have.
You point out, family connections, alumni networks, all of this brings capital more easily to people that have those. And then indirectly, Black founders don't have these so-called accelerator programs where, they got to pay for lawyers, they got to pay for credit, they got to pay for Google credit. So to launch a business is more difficult, costs more money. So you have difficulty getting capital, and you actually need more capital to launch a successful business. But you point out the metrics that show that once launched, you might have a better chance with one of these companies and with a company that easily does get funded.
Absolutely. As a professor, I did research 2 years ago that showed that it costs at least $250,000 more for a Black entrepreneur to start the same exact business as their white peer for the very reasons you mentioned. We have lawyers, but we don't necessarily have big Silicon Valley term sheet driven lawyers. And so we pay for those. If you're not in an accelerator program, which oftentimes you're excluded from because you don't have a team, then you don't get the ad credits that oftentimes help subsidize your marketing costs. And so it's a huge hurdle that we have to deal with. And I think the challenge, though, as always, is that Black entrepreneurs, just like the Black community, is resilient. In reality, Great Depression, we outperformed white businesses by over 30%. So I think that there's a level of resilience and intellectual capacity and social capital that looks different that allows our businesses to be successful. But let's not be mistaken, without those infusions of capital, we don't reach the same level of scale. You know, Black women, as you mentioned at the intro, are starting businesses 6 times faster than the white male peers, but we're handicapped without those social capital networks and access to capital and just access to other institutions that could accelerate, as they say, our progress. And so our progress is slower, but we get there, as evidenced by those entrepreneurs that were in the opening clip and their resilience and how they're serving their community.
So based on the 2 videos that I added to this, that you had the opportunity to watch, it's not about Black people didn't do this or they didn't do that. It's the access to capital, the social capital as well as the financial capital. The 2 mechanisms are not aligned with each other, and that's why you don't see most Black people doing the things that you thought they should be doing, because they didn't have the capabilities to do it. Not because they were incompetent, not because they didn't feel like it. It's just that they did not have access to those markets. And so when you lack the social capital, when you lack the network capacity, as well as the bandwidth, as well as the other factors that come into this, then you start to understand and break down that this is a systemic issue. It's an institutional issue as well as a social issue, and we can't always keep putting the blame on the lap of of Black people rather than the system itself, as well as all the other intricate details that go into this, such as who they know and what they know, and intellectual capacity, as well as other forms of cultural resilience systems in place. And so this is where we are right now. And I just wanted to make sure I put this on the record, because I don't want to leave things, out for, question without actually providing an answer to it. Like, share, and subscribe.